Hey guys, today we're going to be testing to see if the Ryzen 7 7800X 3D paired with an RTX 4070 Super can game in 4K. However, we're not just going to use any 4K monitor, we're going to be using a 77-inch Samsung S89C OLED. Kind of a mouthful, but it's okay. I'm used to having my mouth full of Twinkies. The reason why I'm using this TV is because I recently got this TV. It's not a super high-end 4K OLED TV. I did make sure this one supported 4K at 144 Hertz. Right now, this TV's priced at around $2,000. So I guess you could say this is a poor man's 77-inch OLED TV. We're gonna be doing some gaming, some benchmarks. We're going to see if the 4070 Super, while being paired with the 7800X 3D, can actually game in 4K. The 4070 Super isn't really advertised as a 4K card. It's more of a really good 1440p GPU. So we're gonna be pushing the limits. We're gonna do some benchmarks, we're gonna do some gaming in 4K to see if the 4070 Super can game in 4K on a 4K OLED TV. It's going to be pretty sicko mode. So before we get started, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments below. And every video I post will be more sicko mode than the last. All right, let's get to it. First things first, let's talk about some of the specs that we have going on here, starting with the processor. I'm gonna keep it short and sweet because this video is about the 4070 Super playing 4K. $389, 8 cores, 16 threads, 96 megabytes of L3 cache. It's AMD's ultimate gaming processor. This for sure is not gonna be the bottleneck in our system. And a quick overview of the specs of the 4070 Super. $600. I would have liked to see 16 gigs of VRAM, but 12 is still not that bad. At 220 watts, it's not as super power hungry as some other GPUs. It was released in January of 2024. This card is a refresh of the 4070, which came out in 2023, except this card is black. And it honestly looks way cooler when it's murdered out in black. So on paper, this card is no slouch. However, like I said earlier in the video, the 4070 Super is designed to play in 1440p, so gaming in 4K may be pushing it to its limits. And what are the specs of our system we're testing today? The motherboard we're using is a B650 Aorus Elite AX motherboard by Gigabyte, 32 gigabytes of DDR5 Corsair Dominator RAM. If you're into dominating, you need to have Corsair Dominator RAM in your in your build. Cooling the CPU, I'm using the nzxt Kraken Z73 AIO, a terabyte WD black NVMe, 850 watt power supply, and it's all inside of the nzxt H9 Elite case. And both my cats Shaquille O'Neal and Klaus seem to love this build. But just how good can you game in 4K with a $600 GPU? And will we be able to take advantage of the 77-inch OLED's 144Hz refresh rate? And before we get started with the test, even though this is kind of like a budget OLED TV, RTX gives it an overall score of 8.9, and that score is only 1/10 away from Samsung's flagship model, the S95C, while being about $1,800 cheaper.
But wait! There's more!
And not only that, this TV does come with a free flashlight to give you a more immersive experience. I'm just kidding. I just wanted to see if you're still paying attention. But yeah, this TV isn't messing around. So I'm gonna get straight into the gaming because I want to just show you what kind of performance you get when trying to game in 4K. Starting with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So at 4K with RTX on, the 4070 Super pretty much manhandled Shadow of the Tomb Raider. 169 frames per second average with 133 and 113 as your 1% and 0.1% lows. And you don't need to turn RTX off to play this game in 4K because your FPS is well above 144 frames per second. So phenomenal scores. I really doubt other games are going to give us this kind of FPS at 4K though. The next game I ran was Starfield. So 4K ultra settings, and honestly Starfield is so badly optimized, so I am going to cut this system some slack. 58 average FPS, 47 and 32 for the 1% and 0.1% lows. So the game's kind of playable, but if you get into any fight scenes or if you're in an open world map, your FPS does suffer, as seen in my gameplay. Wait, what? That's just my cat Klaus. Klaus must have deleted my footage. Whatever. the gameplay was kinda ass anyway. You probably want to drop down to high or medium settings. And we're gonna go straight into the next game, which is Hogwarts Legacy, 4K Ultra settings, and I will say this game won't run well on 16 gigs of RAM. Luckily our system has 32 gigs, but just giving you a heads up because 16 gigs isn't gonna cut it in this game. But anyways, 72 frames per second is pretty healthy for your average FPS. 44 and 21 for your 1% and 0.1% lows isn't the greatest. However, during my gameplay, I didn't really see my FPS drop that much. Gameplay was surprisingly smooth. And I am playing as my wife's character because she's way further in the game than I am. And I will say, flying around Hogwarts was a magical experience. It was actually buttery smooth gameplay. So I would say this game is more than just playable, it's actually a pretty good experience when playing at 4K Ultra settings. And it definitely put me in a Harry Potter mood. After that, I ran Cyberpunk, 4K Ultra settings, and in this game RTX FPS was actually better. So if you think turning RTX off will give you better FPS with this GPU, it won't. 59, 48, 44. For this game, those numbers actually aren't that bad, especially at 4K. Now, how was actual gameplay on my 4K TV? I was mostly hovering in the 50s whenever there was any kind of action. Not the greatest experience. I would like to be over 60 FPS. But it's playable. I would maybe turn down the settings to high to medium settings. But I would say that this game is definitely playable in 4K with the 4070 Super. And yes, I know I'm sitting up way too close, but I was using a wired mouse and keyboard, so that's why I'm pretty much motorboating the TV. And yes, I know there's wireless mouse and keyboards, I just don't have one right now. The next game I ran was Red Dead Redemption 2. Once again, 4K Ultra settings. My average FPS was at 70, with 61 and 44 being my 1% and 0.1% lows, which is actually pretty good for this game. Even though Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't one of the latest games, it's still GPU intensive, especially if you want a game in 4K Ultra settings. And once again, I think Klaus deleted my footage of the gameplay, but you're gonna have to take my word for it. And I promise, I would never lie to you. But Klaus definitely will, so you gotta watch out for him. And the final game I ran was GTA 5. 4K Ultra settings. 91 is a very healthy average FPS, and it was good to see that my 1% and 0.1% lows were both above 60 frames per second. Gameplay was pretty smooth, and in the game I decided to go on a midnight walk. The conversation I had on the phone earlier with my wife didn't go the way I wanted.
So no head?
So I had to let some of my frustrations out. But after stealing a couple cars and running several red lights, I think I got all of it out of my system. But yeah, the 4070 Super can definitely play this game at 4K Ultra settings with zero issues at all. Alright, so after doing all those tests, after figuring out what numbers we get when gaming in 4K, what does this all mean? Well, it means
boys have a penis, girls have a vagina.
in the end, the 4070 Super is capable of gaming in 4K with most games. And I say that because it kind of struggled with Starfield, but like I said earlier, just turn down some of the settings, probably medium to high. And maybe future AAA titles may not be playable in 4K, but honestly, this GPU kind of kicked ass on the OLED TV. It was really awesome, and I think the game that looked the best in 4K was Worms World Party. If you're wanting to play a game with amazing 2D graphics, then I suggest you get Worms. The game, that is. Just kidding guys, this was a childhood favorite game of mine, so it's like over 20 years old. But going back to the question, can the 4070 Super game on a 77-inch 4K OLED TV? And the answer is yes. Now I will say that the 4070 Super was designed to play games at 1440p ultra settings, and it's probably the best 1440p card out right now. But after making this video, the 4070 Super has proven to me that it can game in 4K ultra settings. Now I will say that this is on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to 4K gaming GPUs. The 4080 Super, the 4090, and even the 7900 XTX will give you better performance when gaming in 4K. However, what the 4070 Super has going for it is the fact that it's only $599, and it kind of pains me to say only $599. because I remember back when you can get a flagship card for only $699 when the 1080 Ti came out, which is arguably one of the best GPUs of all time. But now that GPU prices can hit over $2,000 for flagship cards, $599 isn't too bad, especially for a 4K gaming GPU. Let me know what you guys think. Are you guys using the 4070 Super to game in 4K? And what kind of CPU do you have paired with it? If you like this content, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Me and my boy Klaus and Shaquille O'Neal, we put in a lot of work to make sure that these videos are as sicko mode as possible. And like always, have a sicko mode day.